Welcome into tipsforgamers.com, home of pro gamers dedicated to making the game work for you. Our motto is simple: don't just play the game, own the game. Today we will be going over the best playbooks and schemes for simulation in Madden 21. Make sure to show us some love, guys, and help us get this video to as many likes as we can. Also, make sure to leave us a comment down below and visit our website to join our Madden group for other great Madden content. And if you want to look like a saucy beast, make sure to get merched up because, as you all know, it's nothing personal, baby. It's just business. Simulation has become more of a fickle beast in the recent Maddens. However, we got you covered with the best playbooks and schemes, and if you guys put the right players within these schemes, you will be super successful. We also found the way you sim can determine how many Super Bowls you win at the end of your career, but we will go over that in another video at a different time. And if you guys have not checked out our latest video on how to get a 99 overall team, where we share our practice squad secrets with you guys, you need to check it out because you can create a MUT style team within franchise. And we're not kidding even the slightest, not even slightly clickbaiting you in this. The link will be in the description below. After this video is over, guys, you have to check it out, but check it out after the video, obviously. This video is good. That one's amazing. But check it out after, all right, guys? So we're going to talk about offense first, and then we'll move on to defense. What we found on offense was shocking to us because we thought it would be the same as last year's, which is Casey's playbook. However, that was not the case. Casey's playbook can win you a championship. There's no doubt about that. Many other playbooks can as well. However, this year, all of our testing led us back to the same team each time. And that playbook was Cleveland's playbook through and through. We got to the playoffs almost every single year after the first few years of building our team. So what we did is we wanted to run tests on these playbooks, and we tested several different playbooks in different styles of rebuilds, and we chose a quarterback who was a 72 overall, who was a normal dev as a rookie. Now, a 72 overall normal dev rookie quarterback really is nothing that special. As many of you guys know, it still is going to take a long time to get that quarterback up to a high overall and get him to a productive role on your team. So what we did is we chose CJ Kaplan, who was that 72 overall. He was a scrambling style quarterback. He was a normal dev. And what we did was we wanted to make him a dual threat quarterback, because what's better than a dual threat quarterback? Nothing's better than a dual threat quarterback. So on the offensive schemes that we used, we actually tested two different schemes. We tested the vertical power run, and it's fine, it's great, and it's dandy. The only issue with it is power halfbacks tend to just get less production, less rushing yards. They get a fair amount of touchdowns, but they really didn't change the game for us. I like everything on this list except for the power halfback. Now, a lot of people say, well, what do schemes really have to do with this? The thing that schemes have to do with this is if you start to build the players that fit your schemes, you get a bonus when players get the scheme fit for XP. So I'll end up getting more XP by choosing the right scheme and putting my players in the scheme that I best want. And then what we did is we tested the vertical zone run. And I love the vertical zone run. The lineman with the agile, it's not too bad. We didn't have too many that fit it because we were mixing between the vertical power run and this one as well. But we found a lot of success with this vertical zone run because even though we need a power halfbacks were not doing significantly better than elusive halfbacks. It just wasn't even coming close. Montgomery on our team is a power halfback style. You know, he's a power style halfback. He can be elusive as well. You can fit him into that elusive category. That's what makes Montgomery a special halfback. However, this elusive halfback with the deep threat and all of these, you know, it has basically the same thing across the board, except for the right tackle is right here, as you see, a pass protector, and the left tackle is a pass protector. The rest of them are power, and that's great. That's really good stuff. However, the vertical zone run, we found just as much success, and we found even more success with the halfback. So in reality, you can switch between these, but the vertical zone run, it just added that extra layer. And then the more we ended up fitting our guys in that scheme, we ended up getting more XP out of these guys, and we noticed a big difference. So for your team, what we would recommend is using an improviser style quarterback, a scrambler, and going that route. Like, you could see him. This guy would be one of the best users out there. I mean, he would be absolutely amazing. His traits are phenomenal. His speed's phenomenal. And he's also extremely good in sim. Injury is important. As you can see there, his injury is ridiculous. But his throw power is up there, and we've gotten that up over time. But I would definitely start out with a scrambler, an improviser, something of that nature, and then work your way up to a strong arm. Halfback wise, if you guys can get the best halfback, which is a halfback like this, James Stallworth is one of the best halfbacks you can get. And Montgomery is one of those guys as well. David Montgomery is another halfback who is just flirting with excellence because of the fact that you could see here with the power back and the elusive back, they're a two combo punch, and it's quite beautiful. The elusive, though, is where it takes the cake. Having an elusive back, a little bit more nimble back there, a little bit more, shake and bake, can get through some decent COD. You're just going to notice a little bit more of an ump. If you have a huge power back, it just doesn't seem to make enough of a difference for it to be as impactful as you need it to be. Fullback wise, power halfback or a blocking halfback is obviously what you want to do, but utility, don't forget about the utility and start to add them up. And speed isn't as big of a criteria on fullback. It's just not. Wide receiver, speed across the board is huge. And the beautiful thing about it is you can find these guys all over. They're just filled in this draft. We drafted this guy last year, and he's a superstar X factor. Okay, and we drafted him like the 3rd round. I mean, look at his speed. He's pretty fast for the most part. Definitely not slow. Moving on to some of these other guys. Goldsberry, we drafted him in the 5th round. He was a superstar dev. Now he's a star dev. We've gotten his speed up a little bit. But the speed just comes through and through with these guys. This is another guy we drafted last year. He's got some decent speed. But LaRubio's a guy we drafted, and we ended up having wide receivers where this speed was the average. This speed, this 95, 96 speed, 94 was even slow for us at a time. We've kind of morphed away from that here because this is just a test, rebuild, just something we're testing for the schemes and the playbooks and all that stuff. But wide receivers, you're going to get through and through in the draft like crazy. And on top of that as well, you're going to get a lot of ones with hidden devs. You're going to get ones, this guy didn't have it, but he didn't really need it because he was getting fantastic. He was becoming a beast just by himself with that normal dev. But speed and also looking at that deep threat. Just make sure they're a deep threat, work on them from there, then work up the slot, the route running, all of that beautiful stuff. But deep threat is your key here. Now, the big thing about tight end, what's great about tight end is they don't actually have to be tight ends. You can see here our tight end's absolutely abysmal in the blocking range. It's not even close. His blocking's a 43, and that's because this guy was a wide receiver. Okay, and we put a wide receiver because of his speed. In his size, we put this wide receiver at tight end. He has no drop passes. His pass blocking is just atrocious. But look at his speed, and this guy ended up being almost 1,000-yard tight end every other year. He was getting at least in the 800 range, and 700 yards for him in a season was just low. It was just a low amount. And he's getting quite a bit of touchdowns. And, these guys were just getting a lot. So we ended up going with this most of the time, wide receivers for tight ends. And as you can see here, it's really not unrealistic if you're doing a realistic style rebuild because look at the size of this guy. This guy's massive as shit. 6'4", 237 pounds, absolutely huge. So you could definitely do that and look to add that into your rebuilds. On offensive line, just get the best that you can get. Worry about working them up to what you need to get them to later. Just get the best ones that you could get, because linemen are definitely something that dies off the more and more you use those auto-generated draft classes. They just don't stick to what we're seeing in the NFL now. The guys who are in the NFL now and what EA gives them their ratings, you just don't see that. Like a 72 overall 5 years into your league is considered pretty decent. If you find one with a hidden dev, you basically landed the jackpot. So just worry about picking up the best ones that you can, and you'll be able to get guys like Woods. Wood had never had a good development, ever had a good development. This guy we got up over a period of time, and he ended up doing very well for us. He's only an 85 overall. However, he's a normal dev, and he came into the league at like a 73 overall, and we've gotten him up over time. So I would worry first about just getting a good offensive lineman, and then worry about the player archetypes there. We worked on his power a lot to test him. And we didn't find that much success with the power. It was not bad, but I think the agile is pretty important. I really do. I think it's more important. We're going to run more tests on it, but I think the agile is pretty important. So moving on to defense, what we found, it wasn't even close. It just wasn't even close. And it was the Baltimore Ravens defense. The Baltimore Ravens defense, if you add the right guys in this mix, you are going to get an absolute crazy amount of sacks in a year. We ended up being top 3 defense every year. 3 years in a row, we were the number 1 defense. Obviously, I put the right guys in place. You could put these playbooks in, put the wrong guys in place, and you'll never see success. You just never will. You'll never come across success ever. So it could be pretty painful. We could show you the playbooks, guys, but you really do have to implement the right guys in. And we'll go over the guys that you should be putting in. Now, Disguise 3-4 is something that we really enjoyed. And there's something that you could do to make this even better. And we'll go over our defense here to show you guys. So when it comes to defense, get smart and get creative with what you're doing here. A lot of guys want to use the basic stuff that everyone else uses. Hey, I get cornerbacks, I get safeties, and then I get, strong safeties and my outside linebackers, and they just stick with what Madden gives them, but they're not actually being realistic with their ideas. One beautiful thing about football in general and real life with football is that these guys move to different positions all the time that best fit the team. You'll see cornerbacks move to safety, Kareem Jackson when they get older. You see guys move from outside linebacker to ends, or ends to outside linebackers. You see like Khalil Mack, who plays in that 3-4, and he ends up blitzing the quarterback. He's kind of like a Von Miller. Basically, he is a Von Miller. I think I don't know who's better. I'm not even going to go there. But the thing about it is like Gary. So Rashawn Gary, the guy that we talked about trading for, this guy ended up getting to a 92 overall, actually a 91 overall, the +1 morale. He turned into a superstar dev, and we didn't even have XP settings set that high. We just didn't. But this guy turned into a monster, and the reason he turned into a monster is because, for one, he's huge, 6'5", 270, but he comes out as a power rusher. So what we did is we put a lot of these guys that were outside linebackers that were power rushers who were good at getting to the quarterback, and we put them at end. And Khalil Mack ended up leaving, but we had Khalil Mack at the left end position, and he ended up breaking the sack record. So in 1 year, we ended up getting 26 sacks. Now, unfortunately, Myles Garrett ended up having a huge season. He ended up getting 31 sacks. He can kiss my ass. But aside from that, he ended up breaking the sack record, which is 26. And if you look at the all-time, this is what we had with him. And we didn't even put him in the right spot at the right time, because if we would have put him there earlier, he probably would have beaten this. He really would have. He got 26 sacks. If you look at the year we did that, he was already old. So we tried him at different spots to see. And when we put Khalil Mack at left end with that power rushing, the first year he ended up breaking the sack record. And then after that, it was double-digit sacks almost every single year. He got on the top all-time list of the best, of the most defensive sacks in a career at 146. And Myles Garrett's just crushing it there on the Browns. But if we would have put Khalil Mack in a better situation in the beginning, which we know now to do it, he would have blown this out of the water. I mean, he just would have. He ended up just crushing it with the sacks. So it was exciting to see. And the big thing that we found when we were doing the testing on the ends was that when we added a big end, we tried D tackles at first that showed the power rushing. We said, all right, we're going to put a big guy in there with strength. And those guys just never got enough production. They really didn't. They weren't getting the sacks. They just weren't fast enough. So the big key takeaway of what we started to understand was that speed kills, because when a quarterback starts to run out of the pocket, those big guys were not chasing him down. They just weren't getting to him in time. So when we had Khalil Mack and we had Gary and we had other guys who were there, we saw our sack margin increase tenfold. Those guys were getting to him. We were seeing a lot of tackles in the backfield. We were seeing running backs with less rushing yards in the game. We noticed that the destruction jumped up tremendously. And on D tackle, the big thing too that we found is guys like this, Raphael Matthews, a guy that we really enjoyed having onto our team, and this is a rare player, and we didn't get to put him in, when he was younger, because he would have been at a much higher overall. We just had really good guys in front of him that he just didn't have a shot in hell of starting over. But he's an 81 speed. Now, for a big fella like this being an 81 speed, it's quite shocking. Okay, and this guy did a lot of damage. That block shedding, the power moves we found were huge. So what we did was we really loved to increment in the faster, bigger power rushing guys, and then the huge monsters in the middle, and it really jumped up. And then moving on to outside linebackers, the beautiful thing to know about on these linebackers in general, speed kills. Okay, it really does. The right outside linebackers, we never got a lot of production from. They just were not getting enough they just weren't getting in the mix enough. And the reason is because our other guys in different positions were eating up all the sacks, eating up most of the tackles. He still, like Kaplan, still would get pretty decent sack margins through the year, decent tackles, but it was all decent. It wasn't no Khalil Mack, it wasn't Gary, it wasn't any of these guys. And then also, we took Simmons and moved him to left outside linebacker, and he ended up doing fantastic at outside linebacker. He did great in middle linebacker. He did phenomenal at middle linebacker. Do not hesitate to take safeties and move them to linebackers. Don't hesitate to do it. One key thing that you want to look away from this here is like Pierman here. Pierman was not a huge draft pick. This guy was not absolutely phenomenal coming out. No one thought he was going to do amazing. But what happened is because of his speed, and we ended up turning him to a pass coverage linebacker, he ended up getting huge production. Huge production. If you have a slow linebacker, it's going to be very painful. Even Connor here, Connor's fast. So both of our linebackers get huge production. These guys increased drastically in just 1 year from their previous overall. And speed really did play a part. So if you guys want to use safeties, you can, but you don't have to, because as you can see here, we drafted these guys, and these guys are burners. I mean, these guys are pretty fast. 88 speed is nothing to be ashamed of when it comes to a linebacker. Right outside linebacker was simple with Kaplan. It was just speed rushing. Speed rushing. His speed's an 83s, not super fast. He wasn't getting a lot of sacks. He was just okay production. Left outside linebacker is a power rusher, but you don't have to be 100% power rusher. You're still going to get a decent amount of sacks. If you have a good power rusher here, that's great and dandy, but we like to use guys who are fast, even with that power rushing. They want us to put the power rusher, use guys who are fast, and we just noticed a drastic increase into our defensive production. The other great thing too is it makes this very easy. This defense is very easy to operate because cornerbacks are going to change the name. Our free safeties are cornerbacks, or were cornerbacks. Our strong safeties were cornerbacks because they only need to be hybrid. Okay, so this is what's great with them. all cornerbacks are basically, when you move them over, are flirting with hybrid right away. Cornerbacks are faster than all the other positions on defense. There's no question. So you could get extreme burners and you could put them all over. And what's beautiful, any of those 67 overalls that you have, the 68s or whatever, any of those guys, you could put them at backup safeties. And what we saw is we ended up trading them later on because they ended up doing very well and getting to that 74, 75 overall range, and we didn't need them anymore. So we ended up trading them away, and just because of our system and how it's set up, these guys ended up getting great production, and what happened was it created more trade value for us. So if you guys set up your defenses this way, or this defense and your offense this way, you will see production. It is not going to be super easy. You're not going to win the Super Bowl every year, no questions asked. But the thing is you're going to have one of the best teams out there, period. And, with cornerbacks, I just love utilizing these cornerbacks because these cornerbacks are super fast, and your deep backs in general, cornerbacks, safeties, and your middle linebackers are going to get most of the tackles. It's definitely to where you're going to blitz them, go after that quarterback, and when that quarterback gets rid of the ball, all these guys here are just going to close in on them. This defense we found was superior to all defenses, and it wasn't even close. I mean, it wasn't, even when we were watching the game in simulation, it was night and day. Yeah, it would go 5 drives in a row against Green Bay, and they would turn the ball over in 5 drives 3 times. It was just insane the amount of production we got. So it's hard to keep finding these really good ends, but if you could keep putting them into your guys' organization and into this defense, you're going to excel.